everybody. As Bob just mentioned, my name is Declan Reidy. I've prepared this presentation for all of you this evening on online scams and scammers. Now, before we get started, there's just a couple of brief things I wanted to talk about. First of all, just so you all are aware, this is being filmed, this is being recorded. It's going to go on our YouTube channel after tonight or within the next few days. So if you ever want to revisit it or share it with somebody else who you think this might be useful for, that's a great resource, a great way to do that. We'll also have this camera set up here for people who are attending this meeting online via the Google Meet. Additionally, I set this presentation up to be interactive as possible. So throughout the presentation, there'll be opportunities to make comments. I'll ask you to raise your hand and share your experiences. Participating is not required. Of course, you can sit there and fall asleep if you wish, but I think that learning happens the best when we all participate as much as we can. So I will invite you all, like I said, to participate. If you have questions at any time, please just raise your hand. I'll be happy to answer your questions, and we'll also stop, partway through occasionally to see if anybody has any questions. So online scams and scammers. Now, I actually lied a little bit just then. There is one thing that I'm going to require everybody to participate in, but after that, well, you can sit there and do whatever you please. So I just want everybody to raise their hand. Okay, if you've ever been contacted by a scammer or you know somebody who has, at all, at any time in your life. Now, keeping your hand up, just take a look around. 100%. Every single man in this room has his hand up, okay? You can put your hands down. So,
Charlie has his hand up too.
Okay, excellent, perfect. Everybody in this room and not in this room had their hands up. And the reason I wanted to show that is because this is a super common thing. All of us, this is just a symptom of living in our digital world. All of us are going to experience scams. We have experienced scams. We will continue to experience scams. So that's why it's so important to know what to look out for and to, be prepared to deal with stuff as it comes up. So that's why we're doing this presentation today. I hope this is helpful, and we'll get right into it. So to start off, does anyone have any specific personal experiences that they'd like to share? You don't have to. I know this can be a personal thing, but does anyone have any personal experiences with scams or scammers that they'd like to share?
I do.
Yes, sir.
And so I get this guy that calls me constantly. I mean, for the last 10 years. I'll pick up. He goes, Edward, knows my name. And I say, I'll hang up. I've tried, leave me alone. I've tried, would you please not call here? He goes on, so I let him go on, and he goes into a role about collecting for a police pact. Tim Krasinski, he calls himself, which probably isn't his name. But the guy is like, it's a real nuisance. I'll be eating dinner and it rains. So finally I wised up. It's from Minneapolis. So I check my read. And it rains, and if it's from Minneapolis, just leave it be. But honestly, for years, you guys bug me,
Yeah, absolutely. So that's a common thing, right? We all get phone calls all the time from numbers we don't recognize. And the tough thing is, every once in a while, it's actually something that you want to pick up. But most of the time, it's just a scam. So we'll talk about in this presentation how to deal. But the not picking it up, it's exactly what you want to do, is not even give them the time of day. Anyone else have anything else that they'd like to share before we move on? Yes, sir.
About 10, 15 years ago, I got a call from from nowhere, and says, Mr. Regazio, you're such a good citizen, pay all your taxes. I'm from the government grant department, and we have $10,000, and I just hung up on him.
Yeah.
And I told my wife, she said, you should have kept going, not that she expected to get the money. But 2 weeks later, I get the same call, and again, the person has a tint to his English, so he's not coming from the States. So I get the same spiel, and then after about a couple of minutes, I interrupted him. I said, excuse me, sir, can you tell me who won the World Series last year? Was it the Boston Patriots, Chicago Bears? Click.
Yeah, so again, a phone call, super common one. That's probably, if not the most common one, is just getting phone calls. And like we talked about before, you just don't even give them the time of day. You don't want to, give them a chance to try to trick you. So yeah, just hanging up, that's the best thing to do. We'll do one more. Adam.
So, not long ago, there was a scam done by against Easy Pass. We have heard about this. Easy Pass.
Yep. Oh, yeah.
When they go on the highway. Email came in. My wife pays Easy Pass. She thought it was real. She clicked on it. Luckily, she didn't get very far. She figured it out. But my goodness, that email looked so authentic.
Hey, I had that one the other day. Pay $4.96, I'll lose your registration.
Right.
I'm like, I'm looking at it, it has official logos. I called my friend who's a banker and she says, skip it.
Yeah.
I got that text just today.
Yeah, that's one that's going around right now. They seem to sometimes have themes that they like to follow. One that I've been getting constantly is every couple of days I'll get a text on my phone saying, hey, my name is whatever. I've got a job offer for you. Would you like to hear more? Nobody's texting you out of the blue and not even, just to offer you a job for not even say what it is. So, just I delete the number. But yeah, the Easy Pass one, that's something I got that as well. And as you mentioned, the emails, they can look really, really real. They can look very real. And that's also something that we're going to talk about later. So thank you all for sharing your personal experiences, and we'll have more chance to talk about that stuff as we go on. So before we actually get into the sort of common tactics that scammers use and the ways that they try to scam you, we need to obviously understand what we're actually talking about. What is a scam? Does anyone, before I pull up the dictionary definition here, does anyone have a definition that they think that they'd like to share of what a scam is?
To defraud you by using apparently legitimate means.
That is almost word for word the dictionary definition that I'm about to pull up here. A scam is an attempt to defraud a person or a group after first gaining their trust. So that's a key part at the end there. They'll try to gain your trust, and we'll talk about the ways that they try to do that, but they'll try to gain your trust and then defraud you. Okay, so that's what we're trying to avoid here. Now, does anyone know what they're actually after? This is an easy one. What's that? Money. That's exactly right. The scammers, they want your personal information, they want your money. And the reason they want your personal information is to get money off of that, either by stealing your identity or by selling your information. So at the end of the day, they're after money. And so that's something to be aware of. That's what they're trying to get. So as we talked about at the beginning of this, everybody in this room and on the Google Meet has been contacted by scammers and will continue to be contacted by scammers. So that's why we need to be aware of what to look out for, because that's just something that does happen, has happened, and will continue to happen for the rest of our lives, for all of us. So I'd like to go through now some of the common types of scams. Now, this is obviously not an exhaustive list. I'm only going to have 6 here. And some of these have some overlap, and the definitions can vary and people can call them different things, but this is just to kind of give you a broad idea of the sort of things to look out for. Now, before I start clicking through those, does anyone have any ideas for a specific type of scam that somebody might try to pull on you?
Bank account invasion.
Yes, trying to steal your bank information, trying to go in there and tell you that you owe money to somebody. That's one of the ones we're talking about. That's called a debt scam. Any others?
Social Security number.
Social Security, yes, exactly. If they can trick you into giving them your Social Security number, then they can do all sorts of nefarious things and take out loans in your name and all that sort of thing. I saw a hand over here.
I was told my Walmart account had charged of $798 against it, and you wanted me to call them back, and I don't have a Walmart account.
Yes, exactly. So that is what we might call a phishing scam, and that's another one that we're going to talk about, where somebody pretends to be. Yeah, exactly. And that's one where somebody pretends to be someone that they're not. Paul?
People try to steal other people's medical information.
Yes. Oh yeah, medical information can be a big one.
They can scam your insurance company.
They can scam your insurance company. They can sell it to other people who will scam your insurance company. Yeah, medical information is definitely something that scammers can go after. Yeah.
Loan offers?
Loan offers, yes. Yes, yeah. Yes, if somebody reaches out to you offering a loan, no, they're not. I'm sorry, no, they're not. If it sounds too good to be true, it is. So yeah, exactly, and that's something we'll talk about. So let's go through a couple of these specific types of scams to look out for, some of the most common ones. Now, this is a super common one, and this is a really nefarious one here, a grandparent scam. So what they do is somebody calls you, and they pretend to be a family member. It's called a grandparent scam because oftentimes they pretend to be a child or a grandchild calling a grandparent, and they say, hey, I'm in trouble, I'm stuck in the airport, or, I'm trying to get through customs, or, I just need to be able to pay for a taxi to get home. And they lie to you, and they make you think that it's your family member, but it's really not. Okay, so they'll ask you to send them money, and then you do, and then you never see that money again. So that's a particularly nefarious one. People pretend to be your family members. Now, yeah, that's exactly what I was about to say. Yeah, so with all the developments in AI, artificial intelligence, it's getting easier and easier to do this kind of scam. Because now, instead of somebody calling and trying to sort of fake somebody's voice, but you can kind of hear if it's actually the voice of the person you know, they can actually use AI to make it sound like the person that you know. All right, so it's really insidious, but the way to avoid something like this is to, if you ever heard the phrase trust but verify, that's not what you do here. You do not trust and you verify. So with a grandparent scam, if you get a call from an unknown number, all right, and they say, my name, I'm so-and-so, I'm your grandchild, and I need you to send me money right now, you hang up the phone and verify it some other way. Call them with the number that you know is actually their phone number, or call another family member who would know where they are, what they're doing. There's different ways you can do that, but that's something to watch out for. If you just get a random call from a random number saying, hey, it's your family member and I'm in trouble, it's probably a scam. Yes?
Is that a good reason not to answer a call too?
Yes, exactly. Yeah, if you see an unknown number, you don't even want to pick it up in the first place. Because if you're getting a call from a family member, it should come up with their name right there on your phone already that you have saved in there. So a phishing scam, this is similar to the grandparent scam, but usually this happens where somebody pretends to be a company that you have done business with, or a government agency that might deal with money. Okay, so they'll reach out to you, and this is probably the most common one. All right, and a lot of the examples that people have said so far fall under this category. So what they'll do is they'll reach out to you, they'll say, as was mentioned over here, hey, it's Walmart and we're going to charge you for $600. And, you say you just hung up the phone or deleted the email, whatever it was, because you don't even have a Walmart account. But if you keep going with that, then they'll try to use that to trick you into giving your financial information. All right, so phishing scams are when somebody pretends to be somebody that they're not to try to get your information.
Sometimes
Yes, sir.
American Express and, some of the big credit card companies, if they see a, $2,000 airline ticket, they will stop it and they will call you. So, how do you differentiate?
Yeah, so that's a great question. If anybody didn't hear, the question was, what if you made a big purchase, let's say an airline ticket with your credit card, and then your credit card company calls you to see if it's actually fraud or if you actually did that purchase? So that's a great question. There's a few ways that you can kind of deal with that situation. So one of them would be to expect that call to come through. So, if you try to order that plane ticket and it keeps failing and you definitely made sure you typed in your credit card information correctly, you can probably expect to get a call from the scam alert from your bank or from your credit card saying, hey, we blocked this transaction and that's why it's not going through right now. So that's one way. Another way is to actually save the phone number in your phone. Okay, so you can look up and you can go to the official website of your credit card company and you can figure out online what their number that they'll call you from is, and you can save that in your phone. So that way when you get that call, it doesn't say some random number, it'll say American Express scam line. And so you know that it's the legitimate number. So those are, I think, the two biggest ways that I would look out for that one. One is to expect that, and if you're expecting it, it's a little different than just a random call when you're trying to sleep or whatever. And then the other way is to know what that phone number is, so you know what you're looking for there. But a great question. Yes, sir.
I think you can block the call too, so if you get somebody and it's not legit, you can block it so you're not gonna get it again, like that guy who's been bothering you all those years.
You
would have blocked it. They just keep generating new numbers.
Yes, you can. So you can and you should block the numbers that do call you, but it's also true that they'll Sometimes they'll keep calling you from different phone numbers. Sometimes blocking works. So I always do it, and I recommend that you would as well, because it can save you a little bit of headache, but it's also true that they absolutely will keep coming at you.
Now you can set up in your phone to block, it'll come up, mine comes up as a potential scam right on.
Yeah, so that's a great feature that,
Caller ID, they just flag it.
yes, absolutely. That's a great feature a lot of phones will have. You get a call from an unknown number and it'll say potential scam, and that is a pretty clear indication that you're not dealing with somebody you want to be dealing with. All right, so this is something that we probably all know what this means already. I won't spend too much time on it, but blackmail scams. So that's if somebody gains any kind of private or embarrassing information about you. Maybe it's the medical information like we were talking about before. Maybe it's something else, and they threaten to release that unless you give them money. So that's a pretty direct, you know that you're being scammed kind of scam. And the way to deal with that is you can reach out to your local police department or sheriff's department or the FBI, and they'll instruct you what to do and how to deal with that situation. Now, I guess taking a step back, the way to avoid that in the first place is not to put things on the internet that you wouldn't want everybody to see. Don't send messages or texts or emails if you wouldn't be willing for everybody in the world to read what you sent. But obviously, stuff happens, so if you're ever in this situation, that's a contact law enforcement sort of situation. So this is another one that was mentioned earlier before, somewhere over here, I think somebody said it, is lottery or prize scams. Okay, this is another pretty common one. So this is one where somebody might reach out to you and they'd say, hey, you've just won $1 million on the whatever lottery. Just give us your credit card information and we'll give you the money. All right. If you get a call like that, it's a scam. All right. Nobody's giving away free money. I'm sorry. Like I said before, if it's too good to be true, if it sounds too good to be true, it is. So if somebody reaches out to you pretending that you've won something that you think, hey, I never actually signed up for this, or I never bought into this, then it's a scam. They're lying to you and they're just trying to steal your personal information.
So that prince from
Yes.
Nigeria.
Yes, the prince from Nigeria who wants to give you $5 million. Unfortunately, it's not going to happen.
I laughed, I got that. It was like, wow, they're still doing that one.
Yeah, sometimes you see ones like that. All right, this is another one that was mentioned before that I touched upon briefly, is debt scams. All right, so oftentimes we have debt for all sorts of things, student loans, houses, cars, of course, credit card debt, all that sort of thing. And sometimes scammers will find that out somehow. They'll steal your information somehow, or they'll buy it from somebody else who has. And then they'll reach out to you and they'll say, hey, you better pay up this amount right now, or we're going to take your car, or whatever they'll say. All right, so people can reach out. This is similar to phishing, people pretending to be debt collection agencies, or the government if you owe a debt to the government, and let's say taxes, unpaid taxes. So the way to stay safe with this one is don't pay debts to people you don't know. Simple as that. So if some random phone number reaches out to you or some random email address and they say, hey, you got to pay us this debt that you owe, no, you don't. All right, if you know that you owe a certain amount of money to your bank for your mortgage on your house, then pay your bank and don't pay anybody else. All right. Same thing if you know you owe a certain amount on a credit card. You owe $300 on this American Express card. You pay that to American Express, okay? They're not gonna send some random person who's gonna just text you from a random phone number. They're not gonna send somebody like that after you to pick up that debt. So you pay it straight to the source, pay it to the person that you actually owe. And if you don't have any sort of debt and somebody reaches out to you and they say, hey, you owe $300 on this credit card, and you think, well, I never had that credit card, that's because they're lying to you, okay? And they're trying to trick you. That's what all this comes down to, is them lying to you and trying to trick you. So the last one we'll talk about here is another pretty insidious one, and it's romance scams. So what happens in this situation is somebody pretends to be somebody else online, and they'll build a relationship with you. Sometimes that's a friendship, sometimes it's a romantic relationship online. And then they'll use that leverage over you to try to steal money from you. So the way to avoid this one is just to not, build that sort of relationship with somebody online. If you really meet somebody online and you think they're a real person and you want to have a romantic relationship with them, then you take it offline and you go and, meet them in person. But what will happen is people will have years-long relationships. It's a very long game that these scammers will play. Well, they'll have years-long relationships of building up trust and building up friendship and maybe even building up a romantic relationship all online. And then they'll try to say, hey, can you send me a little bit of money for this? Can you send me money for that? And then they'll just keep scamming you and taking your money. So you be very careful with people that you meet online, and you know, if you really think you've met somebody, you know, take it offline. Try to actually talk to them in person, because people pretend to be people who they're not all the time. So before I move on from these, I know that was a lot of information. That was probably the slide that we're going to stick on for the longest out of any of these. But before we move on, does anyone have any questions about any stuff we've talked about so far? Maybe anything on this slide or anything else? Yes.
One question I have is, I mean, normally they ask you to send the money through the bank. Why can't the banks track where the money goes and recover?
Sometimes they can. Yeah, sometimes they actually can. We'll talk about another slide or two, the other ways that they'll try to take money from you. But that is true that if they get money from your bank, sometimes your bank can get it back, but sometimes they can't, because maybe they move the money from your account to theirs and then to another one and then to another one, and then it's just gone. And we'll also talk about later what to do if you have been scammed, and one of the things is to tell your bank and to tell them as quickly as you can, because the faster you try to fix it, the more likely it is they'll be able to get it back. But obviously the best situation is to just not end up in that situation in the first place. Yes?
Hi, I'll start for this. There's a true story. There's a movie about this. It's a true story about a guy who ran a scamming company. And you probably might know, it's a heavy art movie, but it's a true story. And it's a whole company, and they had a competition. They ran competition, see who can get the most out of people. And that's how it was. And you see the whole thing, how all of that works. And there was a whole slew of these people doing it. And it was really interesting, because you see all these things, but then you see it's not one person, at least in this instance, that's doing this. These are companies that are set up, illegal companies that are set up, and that's what they do. So if you're interested, remember that movie, watch it alone.
Yeah, absolutely. A lot of times scammers will work together. If you're getting reached out to by somebody, it might be a bot, or it might be a person working for a company an illegitimate company that does this and makes money that way. Anything else? Any comments or questions or anything? Yes.
Yeah. I was watching Dr. Phil once. He did a whole thing. He put stuff on the board, and this woman came in, and she had been scammed by some guy from, again, Nigeria or somewhere, that fell in love with her online, and went well, the romance, and then the money started.
Yeah.
And she paid out her whole life savings, could not get it back. And Phil went on and explained to everybody how that happened, how it could be avoided, But certainly a horrible thing for the woman. Yeah,
it's a horrible thing. It's very insidious that people will try to build these relationships. But it's just like anything else in life where unfortunately, it's the world that we live in. You can't necessarily always take people at their word. And there's an unfortunate reality.
Are the scammers predominantly on the telephone, or are they sophisticated enough to send threatening, intimidating, looks like professional political flyers or mail?
All of it. Anything that you can think of, yeah. So a lot of the ones that we notice the most often is the phone calls, as you mentioned. But yes, they will send you emails. They will send you sometimes even physical mail. I mean, that's what junk mail is, right?
Another thing that'll sometimes happen is you'll get some software, bad software in your computer, and your computer will say, hey, you have a bug, and you need to call this number to fix it. So it can be that bad where sometimes you get bad software.
Right, and
It's
sometimes
becoming less and less, it's getting better, but it still happens.
Right, but even if you put like a mistype of website, it'll bring you to something that looks like the legit website, and then that will trigger a thing to say, hey, you've got a virus.
Yeah.
Click on this to buy the software, and that's where the scam is.
Yeah.
Some of them are so bad they'll lock your computer and basically hold you ransom. And
Yeah.
This is how a lot of companies get hacked, and they actually have no way around it. Sometimes those companies actually get paid $1 million to get out of it. So
Yeah.
They're told to pay the money, there's no way out of it.
Yeah. In some cases, there's no way out. They lock it.
Yeah.
There's one other one
It's a lot of business.
that the guys were talking about at work the other day. When you're at like the 4th of July festival or the Lowell Folk Festival, and you see posters, you know, hanging up as you're walking down the street, and you're interested in whatever the poster's advertising, and there's a QR code. Scammers are going around with their own QR codes, putting them over posters and over mailers. They're even brazen enough to sometimes go into restaurants and put them over the menu QR codes. And once you scan that QR code and it's in your phone, they literally have everything that's going on in your phone.
Yeah.
So you've got to be careful if you're at the Lowell Folk Festival and you walk by a storefront and you scan that QR code because you're interested in what's going on. Did someone put a fake QR code over that QR code?
Yeah, so to answer your question, it's not really an either or. It's kind of everything you can think of and a lot of things that you also can't think of. You know, I've never heard of that one before, but I totally believe it because I've seen other things, you know, as insidious as that.
You're saying if you do scan a QR code, you can eat all your phone stuff?
This particular one, yeah,
It's possible?
It's possible if it's an insidious website that they're sending you to.
Yeah.
Just remember, I mean, every once in a while I used to get on the computer, you've been corrupted, and just hit Control-Alt-Delete, and that shuts your computer down and gets you can shut it off. So Control-Alt-Delete will get your computer shut down. I mean, it may be too late, but, you know.
Unplug your network.
Yeah, unplugging stuff, that's, yeah. It won't hurt, certainly, if you know, something's going wrong unplugging. But yeah, the modern scams are super sophisticated, and they can look real, and they can sound real, and they will come at you with emails and phone calls and QR codes and computer virus software, and sometimes even in person, and you know, with the QR codes or with junk mail, everything. I mean, like I said, everything that you can think of, and some things that you wouldn't even think of until it happens. So that's why you got to be really careful and watch out for this stuff.
There's a movie it's a comedy, it's called Thelma. Has anyone seen it? And a grandma gets scammed by someone called and said, "Grandma, like, I need some money," like what you just said.
Yeah, one of the grandparent scams. Yeah.
And as she finds out that she gets scammed, and then she like chases down the scammer. It's a comedy. It's really funny though.
Yeah.
And
It sounds familiar.
yeah, it was really good actually. She looks like Betty White.
But wait, yeah, it's she's the one that played Sheldon's grandmother.
Okay. Yeah, and she like chases him down in her scooter and stuff. And she gets one of her friends from the senior center to like come with her to help her.
What's it called?
It's cute. Thelma.
Thelma, okay.
Yeah.
Keep an eye out for it.
Yeah.
Yeah, so as we were just talking about, actually, we've got the slide right here to talk about that. Modern scams are sophisticated. Now, we're all familiar with the sort of old joke about the Nigerian prince, you know, with $30 million trying to send that money to you. And you will still see some things like that you just look at it and you're like, are they even trying with this one? But that's not how they all are, all right? Modern scams in 2025, they can be very sophisticated. They can look very real. I've got a real example actually later in this slide that I got sent that looks so real. So you really have to be mindful with whatever you're doing online. They can look real if it's an email, or like we talked about before with the phone calls, they can fake somebody's voice really well with AI now. So they're very sophisticated. So don't fall into the trap of thinking, oh, you know, this is really obvious stuff. If I come across this, I'll know when I see it, because chances are you won't if you have that attitude. So we've touched upon this as well a little bit. Scammers use different payment methods to try to get your money and get your financial information, but there are some that are especially common and should alert a red flag. You know, if you're starting to go down with this person and go down the path of they're telling you to do these things, and then they bring up one of these things, that should be a red flag of stop, wait a minute, think about this. Before I click it, actually, does anybody have any ideas for common things that they might see?
Pay your debt with a gift card.
Gift card. Oh yeah, well, that's one on here. I'll talk about that in a minute. That's a huge one. Anything else? Bitcoin, cryptocurrencies. Yes, that's another one I have on here. Anything else?
Routing numbers.
Routing numbers and bank transfers. Yes, absolutely. So let's go through what some of these are. Gift cards is the first one I have on here. No legitimate company will ever ask you to pay them with gift cards of another company, that is. So sometimes what scammers will do is, if they want you to give them $500, they'll tell you to go down to CVS and buy $500 worth of iTunes gift cards. And then you buy those gift cards, and then you call them back and you give them the numbers on those cards. And once they take the money from that, you can't get it back. That's a super insidious way of paying them, because that's something that can't really be tracked. It can't be fixed once it's done. So, if somebody's asking you to pay, if some company is, like the government is asking you to pay for your tax debt with iTunes gift cards, that's not the government, it's a scam. I saw a couple of hands, I think I saw you first, Paul.
It's happened in our collaborative with Father Brian for a while, a couple of years ago. I was getting text messages from Father Brian or emails saying, "Hi Paul, I'm busy with a parishioner, and I have to purchase a gift for somebody, and I can't get to the store. Can you go by?" And why do they always use the iTunes cards?
I think because that's one that's easy for them to transfer the money to a form that they're able to use.
So he asked me. So this asked me to actually go out and buy these iTunes cards and then send the numbers back.
Yeah.
And first of all, I know Father Brian too well. Father Brian wanted some. He'll just call me and ask me.
Yeah.
But I did bring it to his attention, and that went on for quite some time.
Yes, I remember hearing about that. Yeah.
Remember? Yeah, that happened for a couple of years. Went on for a couple of years till they can get it to stop.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a thing that, as Paul has said,
being hacked.
What's that?
Your email was hacked.
Yes, yeah. That's something.
You clicked on something at some point that let them into your computer to get your email contacts.
Exactly, yeah. This is something that happened in the Holy Rood. Is somebody stole Father Brian's email and then asked people to buy gift cards for him. And I think the scam worked on a few people, so that was a big problem a couple years back. Yes, sir.
We were buying some gift cards for our grandkids, Best Buy. They have to go through the cards you pick, because some of the cards have been scammed in the rack. So if you have to buy that, take it home.
Fake cards.
Yeah.
Yeah, so they're checking on it, but I don't know how you would check if you went to CVS or.
Well, they're not fake cards. What they do is they come out and they take the number,
Yeah.
and when you buy it, they're like trying every day to use a number. Fail. Oh, you bought it.
Then they can use it right away. Yeah, and sometimes you go to CVS or Best Buy or wherever, and you look at the rack of gift cards, and there'll be signs there saying something. You might be if somebody's asking you to buy these, you might be being scammed. Or if you're trying to buy some gift cards, the cashier might ask you, "Hey, what are you buying these for? Did somebody tell you to buy these for them?" This is a super, super, super common way, because, like I said, they can't track it. They can't get the money back. If you buy gift cards and then you give those codes to the scammers, the money's gone. So no legitimate company, no government agency will ever ask you to pay for things with a gift card. That's an instant sign that 100% this is a scam. Wire transfers, that's a pretty simple one. I think we all understand that. They'll ask you to, transfer money into their account. And then that is one that maybe sometimes you can get it back, but again, it's best to not get in that situation in the first place. Money transfers, same thing. Any kind of digital transfer of funds that can be a way that they ask you to pay them. Cryptocurrency, Bitcoin, that's something that somebody mentioned. That's another one that's really hard to track and really hard to get back if you do it. If somebody's asking you to pay them in Bitcoin or Ethereum or whatever else they might be using that day. That's a sign that this might not be a legitimate dealing. I mean, a legitimate company wants real money. They don't want fake made up money. So, a government agency is never going to ask you to pay your taxes in Bitcoin, right? So that's something to watch out for. Mobile payment apps. So sometimes they'll try to steal your PayPal or your Venmo information. And that's, another way that they'll try to get you to pay. Really any way that they can get you to pay. And stolen identities, that's the last one that I have on here. And that's something that I mentioned before, where this is a really terrible one, because this is not just them taking a certain amount of money from your checking account. if somebody steals your identity, they get your social security number and your date of birth and your mother's maiden name and all that. They can take out lines of credit in your name. So what scammers will do is if they steal your identity, they'll take out a mortgage in your name and then just take the money and run. And then nobody's paying for that. So then when the debt collectors come knocking and the bank says, hey, you owe us $600,000, well, you'll say, I never took out that loan, but they'll say, well, we have your signature and your social security number right here. And then it's a whole big legal thing that you have to go through, and it's a total mess. It's expensive, it's time consuming, it's a headache. And that's in the best case scenarios, when you actually are eventually able to get it dropped. So that's why you need to be careful with your personal information, because sometimes they're not going to try to swipe $500 from you. Sometimes they're going to do something a lot worse and try to steal $600,000 from a bank in your name. Was somebody going to say? Were you saying?
Well, there's another category of bad things that happen on the internet that's different than scams, but there's some similarities, just so you're aware. Information gets stolen all the time, not just from you personally, but from companies. So if you have an account on any website, there's always a risk that the data from that website is going to get stolen. Your email address is going to go on the dark web. Someone's going to find it. Someone's going to use it. That's how they get to you in the first place. They find that stuff on the dark web, or they buy it from the bad person, right? So data getting stolen from companies that might include your data is always possible. My father had a credit card number used by someone 1,000 miles away to buy a big screen TV once, and luckily Walmart and the bank company caught it and called him. But that stuff happens. That's different than scams, but it's a very similar sort of experience you might have.
Yeah, absolutely. Yes.
So it was a while ago, I took my family to Aruba, and I was very careful on how I used my credit card.
Yeah.
And there was only one situation. My kids wanted to go on this. These guys had these boats, rubber boats set up on the beach, and they pulled the boat and they take you out on the water, and they bugged me for days, and I finally gave in to them. But I noticed that these guys, when they took my credit card information, they just wrote it down. And I thought, well, they seemed like pretty legit guys, but I'm not kidding you. About 2 weeks after, I started getting this text message from Bank of America that said, please call this number. I ignored it, kept ignoring it. I finally called it. The man was from a government agency who said, we represent, and I was wondering if maybe you know who the government agency is, because I can't remember. It was many years ago. He said, you went to Aruba on a vacation. Yes. You went to these places. Yes. How do you know? Well, we overlook all the banks, and I want you to know that someone has used your credit card number, and they spent $4,000 at an auto shop in Venezuela. And this is when nobody was going to Venezuela. And he said, because you did call me, you're going to be able to, we'll work with Bank of America. And they ended up giving me the $4,000 back. But had I just ignored that, I would have realized eventually that this money was missing. It hadn't showed up yet in my account, but that's how easy it can happen, and that's a lot of money. He said, we know you didn't go to Venezuela and buy $4,000 of auto parts. That's why we caught it. That's why we stepped in. And but that's how simple it happened. Would you know what government agency that was?
I wouldn't, and I will say that does sound pretty unusual to me. I'm not, obviously I can't say it didn't happen, but that sounds pretty unusual to me. If I were to receive a text message claiming to be just from Bank of America saying call this number, I wouldn't trust that. So the way to deal with a situation like that, where maybe it is legitimate but you're not sure, is, like I said, don't trust, verify. And
I ignored it for a while, and then I just called it. It kept coming, and I called and said, if you didn't call, you would have realized that this money was spent in Venezuela, and then you would have had to have taken up the cause yourself, probably with an attorney, with the bank, so on and so forth, try to chase down who it was. He said, but we are an agency that overlooks all the banks and where money is spent. since the United States wasn't having a relationship with Venezuela at the time, and nobody was going to Venezuela. In fact, they had 2 warships between Venezuela and Aruba, 2 U.S. warships. So we know you didn't go and spend that money. So they worked with me, and I got my money back.
Yeah, I mean, so in a situation like that, maybe perhaps that was legitimate. That's I generally I'd say the exception, not the rule. So in a situation like that, I would not necessarily call the number that they've texted you and listed, say call this number. I would go to Bank of America's official website and I would figure out what their official number is and call them and say, you know, what's happening here.
There was more to play into that. I just cut it short.
Okay, yeah,
I ended up talking with Bank of America.
Yeah. Usually your bank can take care of that. Yes, sir.
I thought that the credit cards, if you've gotten scammed on your credit card, you're not responsible for that money. The banks will take that off.
Yes, that is correct.
Yes, I mean, that's what they do. You don't need to do anything. Just tell them, report it, and say, this isn't my charge, and you're done.
Yes, exactly. The credit card company or the bank will deal with that for you. Yes.
It's not just credit cards, it's bank cards. Like I have a daily routine, and my wife has a daily routine of checking our activities on our debit cards. And in the past year, my wife has been hacked 3 times. When I see something on the activity like DoorDash, I do a lot of cooking. I've never ordered from DoorDash before. So that's a red flag. So we call the bank immediately, they cancel the card, and they do whatever they need to do to try to retrieve whatever monies.
Exactly, that's something.
They're using a skimmer on the bank card.
Yeah, that's something. So checking your thing daily, that's a great strategy to check it daily or every other day to see if there's any charges on there you don't recognize. So now I'd like to talk about some of the strategies that scammers will try to use to trick you. All right, because we talked about the specific ways that they trick you, but these are things to look out for, where if somebody's trying to convince you to give them money and they use strategies like this, that should be a red flag to you. So the first one I have here is authority. All right, so as I've kind of mentioned a couple times, scammers, they might pretend to be from law enforcement agencies or government agencies, the IRS, you know, places like that, or a bank perhaps. They'll pretend to have authority, but really it's somebody lying about who they are. So you need to be careful. You know, if somebody reaches out to you and says, hey, I'm the IRS, you know, don't trust, verify.
Excuse me.
Yes, sir.
Now I heard once the IRS will never call you.
Yes, the IRS will never call you saying, you know, will you pay us for this? Another tactic, and this is a very important one here, is urgency. All right, so scammers will try to make everything seem like it's got to happen right now. And the reason they do that is because they want you to stop thinking. They want you to see this thing and say, oh no, I'm about to lose $600. I gotta call this number right away. I gotta, you know, give them my credit card information right away. They'll try to make everything seem like it's happening right now to try to make you make decisions without thinking about them, decisions that you'll later regret. Reciprocity. This is another one that they use. So scammers will sometimes, and this especially comes with the ones where they develop a relationship with you, they'll make you feel like you owe them something. They'll try to, you know, make nice with you and try to develop some sort of friendship or relationship. And then when they come asking for a certain amount of money, well, you might feel bad. You might say, hey, this person's my friend. Maybe I should help him out. And it kind of sucks to say, but online you can't trust people who are doing that. You know, if somebody starts making a relationship with you and then they ask you for money, they're probably just trying to use that relationship as leverage to cheat you, unfortunately. Fear. It's another big one. All right, this is similar to some of the other ones, but they'll make you afraid. Sometimes they'll even threaten you physically. Usually they threaten you financially. They'll say, either you pay us this amount now or we're going to take all of your money. Sometimes there's scams where they can even trick you into thinking that they already have taken your money, and unless you give them more, then they won't give it back, when that's in fact not actually what's happened. So they'll try to make you afraid and make you feel like there's nothing you can do except do what they say, and that's not true. And we'll talk about what you can do in a future slide. Confusion, it's another one. They'll try to jumble words and they'll try to trick you and they'll lie about things and they'll contradict themselves and they'll just try to make you think, oh, I don't even understand what's going on. I'll just do whatever he says. All right, but that's another situation where you just take a deep breath and you think about it, you give it a moment, and you actually try to think through what's happening. They'll try to confuse you. All right. The last one I have on here is isolation. This is probably the most insidious one on this whole list. Scammers will try to keep you isolated from people you know. All right, so if you get a call and they're starting to maybe convince you, but you're not sure, and you say, let me just call my kid and ask him, what he thinks about this. They'll say, no, don't do that. You can't do that. If you hang up right now, everything's going to be ruined. They will do everything they can to prevent you from talking to somebody. Or once they've already scammed you, they've taken your money, they will then try to do everything they can to prevent you from telling anybody about it. They'll try to make you feel embarrassed about it and feel like, oh, this is an embarrassing thing that shouldn't have happened. And they'll use that feeling to try to make you not tell your bank or not tell the FBI or anybody else. So they'll try to isolate you from your family members. And then that's when they're able to really trick you and really take your money and hurt you in that way. So I know I'm talking for a long time. I've been talking a lot. I just want to point out, if you forget everything else I say today, and you can only remember one slide in this entire slideshow, this should be the one, okay? These are the two things to look out for, okay? If you see either of these two things, that should instantly be a sign that you're about to be scammed, okay? The first one is anything unsolicited. All right, the IRS is not going to call you. A random phone number is not going to text you and say, hey, we have a job offer for you, just give us your information. Walmart's not going to reach out to you about your account when you've never even had one, okay? Anything unsolicited, anything you didn't pay for, you didn't ask for, you're not expecting, that should immediately set off warning lights in your mind that this might be a scam. Okay, anything unsolicited, do not trust it. Simple as. And the other one is something we talked about a little bit, anything urgent. Okay, like I said, scammers will try to point out to you, they'll say, you got to do this right now or X, Y, and Z is going to happen. That's them trying to trick you into doing something that you're going to regret because you're not thinking about it, because you're worked up and you're afraid and they're just trying to push you. Okay, so anything unsolicited and anything that appears to be super urgent, do not trust it. Okay, if you're going to forget everything else I said, those are the two things you should remember. Now, as I mentioned throughout the slideshow, some preventative measures before you ever get scammed to try to help you prevent that from happening. One thing that everybody in this room should do is freeze your credit with every credit bureau. Okay, so Equifax, Experian, and TransUnion. You can go on their websites and you can freeze your credit so that people can't take out a loan or a line of credit in your name without you first going in there and unfreezing it. All right, it's a pretty simple process. It shouldn't take more than a half hour to do it for all three of them total. And that can save you a lot of headache.
And it's free on all three.
It's totally free.
You have to give them your information, right?
Yes, well they already...
The biggest security leak was Equifax.
That's true, yeah.
Huge.
That is true. Even these credit unions are not immune to being hacked, but unfortunately, we gotta work with what we have. So you want them to not allow anyone to take out credit in your name. So that's free. Everybody can and should do that. It's free, it's quick, it's easy. Now, using a credit monitoring service, that's not free, but it's something that I highly recommend, where you can pay one of these credit services to watch your credit, and if anything happens to it, they'll to send you a notification and say, hey, just double checking, did you just take out this loan? And that can give you early warning if something's about to go wrong. So that's not free, but that's something that I'd highly recommend looking into the cost of doing that and considering doing that. Another one that, as Adam mentioned, places can steal your email or your phone if you give it to people online. If you sign up for some company, they can be hacked or they can sell your information. So don't give that information to people who you don't trust. It's another big one we've been talking about all night. Don't answer unknown calls. All right, if it's a unknown, if there's no caller ID, your phone, even if it will usually say scam likely, just don't pick it up. All right, it is a scam. If it says scam likely, it is a scam. You don't need to pick it up.
Who sponsors that information?
Sorry?
Who sponsors that information that lets you know that it might be a scam? Who does that?
Yes, Sprint or T-Mobile, well, it's not Sprint, but T-Mobile or Verizon, whoever. Another one, delete spam emails. So the modern email services like Gmail or Outlook do a pretty good job there's a lot of scam emails that you get that you'll never even see. They don't even come up in your spam inbox, they just delete them outright. But some of them will show up in your spam inbox, and a few of them might even show up in your inbox. But if it's a spam one, just delete it. You don't need to respond to it, you don't need to do anything, you just delete it. Delete it and move on.
We had a guy, a friend, he was Deacon Fran Berg. He told me once, he said, if you see something come up that doesn't look right, don't hit on it.
Yeah. Don't.
All your stuff goes.
Yes, they try to get you to click on links and anything like that, just delete it. Yes, absolutely. Using different passwords. So something that a lot of us have done in the past, or maybe even still do, is use the same password for every website. All right, that's a really bad idea, because what happens is somebody steals your password for one website, they figure out what it is, and then they can hack into all of your other accounts. So you really should be using a totally different password for every website that you sign up for. I know it's a bit of a hassle. You can write them all down, or there's companies that you can pay to. They're called password managers. All right, they can store all your passwords in there. And obviously you got to use one that you trust. But there are some reputable companies that do that. I use one of those personally. So use different passwords for all the websites you sign up for. Another big one is two-factor authentication. So that's sort of a new thing. It's becoming more and more widely used, but that's the sort of thing where with a lot of companies where you sign up with them, and every time you need to sign in, you put in your email and your password, and then they'll either text you or email you a code that you have to put in. So it's just an extra way of checking that it's really you. So even if somebody did steal your password, they're still not able to access your account.
It's actually more secure two-factor authentication, huh?
RSA.
Yeah, of course I don't have it on right now, but the chip you would put into your computer?
Yes, yeah, there's all sorts of different kinds. There's physical ones where you can plug into your computer. There's Google and Microsoft have their authenticator apps. A lot of the simplest ones, though, is just a quick text, and that's a simple and easy way to make sure that, even if somebody does get your password, they can't get into your account. This is something else that we've talked about. Check your bank and your credit report regularly. Check your credit cards. See if there's any charges on there that you don't recognize. And if there is, then you take action. Well, that's the next slide of how to take action. And as we talked about, scammers will try to isolate you from your family. So if you're ever unsure, if you say, hey, I don't know if this is a scam or not, ask somebody else, talk to somebody else, get a second opinion. It's okay, you got time, and it's not an embarrassing thing to be unsure. These scams, as we've said, they're very sophisticated. It can be very convincing. So if you're unsure, just ask somebody else. So let's say you didn't do that and you got scammed. It happens. Well, what can you do about it? First thing, if you haven't already done that, you got to freeze your credit. If somebody steals your identity, they can make your life very difficult by taking out fraudulent loans. So if you freeze your credit, that stops them doing that. Even if you're in the middle of being scammed, if you're on the phone with the scammer and they just took your money and then you realize it was a scam, doesn't matter. Wherever you are in the process, hang up. Hang up and block the number, okay? Wherever you are in the process. Contact your bank, all right? The sooner that you contact the bank, the more likely it is that they'll be able to help you. If you get scammed and then you only tell them 6 months later when you realize what happened, it's a lot less likely they'll be able to fix it. If you get scammed and you call them an hour later, it's definitely not guaranteed, but there's a lot higher of a chance that they'll be able to help you. Same thing with the credit services. If somebody's using your credit card, your American Express card, whatever, or taking out credit with Equifax, Experian, or TransUnion, you tell them that as well. You reach out to them and you say, hey, somebody stole my identity. Somebody's fraudulently using my information. And then if you've been scammed, you contact the police. All right, they will do an investigation, they'll do what they can, they'll tell you what to do, how to get out of it, what can be done, the police or the sheriff's department. and the FBI as well. The FBI is really the governmental organization that does most of the investigation and work on these things, because usually it's, you know, across state boundaries. So the FBI can help you out with that as well. They'll tell you what to do. So if you've been scammed, you got to tell all the people who have access to your money, your bank, your credit services, the police, and they'll help you. And the more people you tell like this, and the sooner you do it, the more likely they'll be able to help you. Now, we're running a little bit over time here, so I want to show some real life examples, but before we get into that, does anybody have any brief questions that we'd like to ask? Okay. So all these ones I'm about to show are real examples of things that I personally was sent within the last few months. I put them in here to show you the sort of things that we can get. I blocked out my email address. So this is a real email that I received in December. Okay. It might be a little hard to see, but I'll point out the things that are wrong with this and the things that made me instantly know that it was a scam. But does anyone notice anything right off the bat about this? It's okay if you can't see it.
Colorful logo.
What's that?
The colorful logo in the top left. It looks official.
Yeah, okay, no, so that's a good, you're right that sometimes they'll have official logos, and the next one I'll show will have some of that. This is just because I printed out the emails. That's the actual Gmail logo. But that is a good thing to look out for. Is there anything else anybody sees in here?
Their email isn't official.
Right, the email. So it's hard to read, but it's just somebody's name at gmail.com.
Yep.
All right, so no company is going to be emailing you from at gmail.com. They would have their own email address there. So that's one of the reasons I instantly knew that it was a scam. So let me click through this, and I've got arrows pointing out a few things. The first one, and there's no way for you guys to have known this, but receipt. Well, I didn't buy anything. I knew that I hadn't bought anything, so I instantly knew receipt, okay, I didn't buy something, it's not my receipt, it's a scam. The email, as Paul just pointed out, it's coming from at gmail.com. All right, that's not going to be a legitimate company just emailing you from gmail.com. The names also don't match up. So right here in the name and in the signature of the email, there's one name, but then the email address itself has a different name. All right, those don't match up. That's a scam. And looking at the contents of this email, it's just a bunch of random gibberish. All right, it's not, if a real company sending me a receipt would not just be a bunch of random characters and not even say what it is, right? They would say what the item was that I bought, what the total was, all those things, and then I'd look at it and say, oh yeah, I did buy that. This is my receipt. But this is just a bunch of random numbers and letters to make it look official, but that's not what a real official online receipt's going to look like. And the name of the receipt, the name of the email there, and the name of the file that they sent me, those don't even match up. All right? So I'm definitely not going to open that file, because that probably has a virus in it or some nefarious thing. Maybe they're trying to scam me with that. I don't know what's in there, so just delete it. So after I got this, I just deleted it. Here's another email that I got. This probably looks pretty familiar to you guys. This is a really common one, McAfee.
Yeah.
Yep, a lot of us have probably received this email, okay? So, as you mentioned, the official logo we got here. Does anyone else see anything on here that shows that it might be a scam? This one's a little harder to read if you're far away. It's okay if you can't see it. I'll point out a couple of things. So, 4 different places. They say, I paid $675.99. They say it right there, they say it right there, say it right there, they say it right there. They want me to see that total and panic, right? Because I know I didn't pay McAfee $600 and I couldn't afford to pay them that much money. They want me to see that high number and panic and say, oh, I bet I gotta cancel this, I gotta do whatever they say and cancel that charge and call them, whatever. But I know that I didn't buy that. And so I know they're trying to trick me. Give me a big total and say, this is how much you spent, to try to make me move along with the process and try to contact them. Now we mentioned urgency, right? The amount of $679 has been processed and it will be debited today, within 24 hours. All right, that's trying to add to the sense of urgency. They want me to see that big total, 675, and then they want me to see it's going to happen today within the next 24 hours. Oh, I better act quick. All right, that's them trying to trick me and override any mental blocks I have in my brain saying this might be a scam, and just do whatever they say, okay? And then the end game of this particular scam, they want me to call them. Okay, so they give the number in bold right there. They tell me right here to call them. They tell me right here to call them. They got the number up here as well. All right, so if I call that phone number, then they're going to start asking for my financial information. Okay, so that's how this particular scam, I presume, would work. I didn't find out because I didn't call the number. But that's what I'm guessing they would have done, is try to take my financial information. So they're trying to trick me with the big total in the 24 hours. Just call this number and we'll figure it out. And if I call the number, they steal my information. This is a final one, and I'm going to show two side by side. As we've been talking about all night, they can be pretty sophisticated, all right? It can be really hard to tell. So take a look at this. One of these is real, one of them is fake, okay? So I'm going to show you both of them, and just look at this. See if you can see anything that looks real or fake, and then I'll show you the other one. And I know it is a little bit hard to see, so.
Who's it from? I can't read the line.
This one says Apple Store, and this one says Apple Store. So I know y'all probably can't see this very well. Let's give you another second to look at it.
You could probably tell by the email address.
Well, it actually lists that it's coming from the same email address.
I can't see it.
That's all right. So I figured you guys wouldn't be able to see it from here. The point is, these are identical. All right, these look exactly the same. Maybe if I look at it for longer, I could figure out which one is real and which one isn't. Okay, I made a purchase from Apple, and I got these two emails. Now, maybe they were both from Apple and they just sent me the email twice by accident. Maybe neither of them are from Apple and somebody sent me the same scam email twice. Maybe one's from Apple and one's not. I don't know, because I didn't click on anything in either of them. Okay, because the point is, they can be indistinguishable. All right, as I've been saying all night, modern scams are sophisticated. It's not going to be a badly worded email with all sorts of typos and broken English, okay? It looks official. They both got the Apple logo and the Apple font and a big button right there to take the survey and all sorts of legal jargon in the bottom here about how old you have to be to take the survey and whatever. They look real. My guess is both of them are real, but I don't know. And I didn't click on anything in either of them.